high quality gem cutting shop specifically laid out to cut opal. Now when setting up, bench height is very important. This height is correct for my height. Can work quite comfortably while standing, or equally so while sitting, which is what we do more of. This is our twin-headed 8-inch grinder, with a 180 grit rub down wheel and a 360 diamond lap on this side. And on the other side we have a 360 final cutting wheel. Our sander is an 8-inch by 3-inch centrifugal drum. As the wheel spins, it expands, locking the belt to the face of it. Our pumice wheel is an 8 by 1/2-inch felt pad on a 6-headed machine, as is our polishing buff, only this one is impregnated with cerium oxide, lapser, and a small amount of 30,000 diamond mesh. Our trim saw is a 6-inch by 6 thou diamond blade, a very useful tool if used correctly. Now we'll adjust the lights, must have adequate lighting, start the machine, adjust the water flow. Now let's have a look at a piece of opal. Fairly rough looking knobby, fairly mixed up looking. We can see here though where it's been chipped. It's a nice bit of gem colour poking through there. Still a very mixed up piece. See a little bit of colour just here, poking through the skin. See colour bars up where it's been snipped. Very, very mixed up knobby. Just pointing those bars out. Seems to run across this way. This is what we assume from the outside. You see it here is a little bit of a blue haze, a couple of big holes there. So this area here will probably be the usable area. We'll look at that closely now. Here's the bar poking through the potch skin. Shows as a blue round here. Couple of huge holes in the back of the piece here. This area should be usable. See how the bar comes down through there, joins up where it has been snipped. We assume it runs that direction. There's your colour bar proper looking down from the top of the stone, or what will be the top. Here's your matrix cap. You have a fair amount of black on the back. There's our bar there. Have quite a large divot here in the matrix cap, and a nasty looking sand hole just over here. So we assume now, because of these holes in the back, that this area here will be usable. We won't know until we rub around the piece, of course. We may have to cut through here, taking this side off. We don't know until we get into the piece. But this area here looks very solid backed. Just pointing out the bars here, we have 3 bars. The bottom one, which will be the top bar, is the gem bar. This area here has to be rubbed down from this point here right through to here. We're looking for continuity of colour. We're trying to find out whether the bar is straight or not. And we rub gently, there's no rush. There's our colour bar. You can see here that it sort of lines up with where the piece has been chipped. So we'll clean out this area here now, hopefully giving us a better look inside the piece. Nice and gently. It's millions of years old. It only takes seconds to completely ruin it. There's our bars. You can see here, just point this out. Our black bar on the bottom, we have our blue in the middle, and our gem green-orange bar across the top. That'll be the bar we'll go for. We'll rub this corner off now to see how far the colour does go into the piece. Or in fact if it goes right around the piece. Just rubbing gently. Just cleaning off that little bit of skin and sand that's on the edge of this knobby. See our colour bar there, it's starting to look straight. That's it, looking down on it. What looked fairly rough is starting to show a bit of promise. Now we'll clean that around the edges a bit further. Even if you're fairly certain where the colour runs, it always pays to go around the knobby and make certain before you face the piece off. There's a kernel starting to pop in there. I'll explain that shortly. Fairly straight barred. Just rubbing it a bit further to clean off this side where the kernel is. And there's our kernel there. Stop the opal in its tracks. Around here it's fairly clean as we saw before. There's our kernel now, just pointing it out. Stops the opal bar from flowing through. We'll clean the other side of that now to see how big a problem this is going to be. Just taking the skin off to expose the colour bar. Just gently, there's no rush with it. There's our colour bar. We can see the kernel either end of that colour. Let's just stop the opal in its tracks both sides. And where that is going to run through the piece, we don't actually know at this point. And it will create problems. It's the back of the piece. Fairly straight bar. Very nice colour. Just clean it off further. A little bit at a time. You can see here now that the kernel has dived straight down through the colour bar, completely breaking it. Down through here. Probably coming from this divot here in the matrix cap. Stop the opal again. Clean that a little bit further on the other side. We're not going to face the piece down until we're absolutely certain that we have continuity and we have sorted out the problems. Just looking at the piece there where the kernel is. We'll give that a bit more of a rub to get that skin off so the colour bar is sharper. Now we can see here there's our kernel straight through. Completely through the knobby, and this colour bar here looks as though it rolls down into the piece, which in fact it probably does. Now where this kernel goes to, you see the other point here, we're not absolutely certain at this time. It may go straight across the piece, or it may pool out in the centre. It goes possibly from this point here. I'm not sure where it'll run. Possibly putting us on a plot. Looking at it on the side here. From this area here, across this way, to here. Giving us a usable area here, hopefully. But it is in fairly deep, straight through the colour bar. Now what it does inside we don't know yet. This area here should be usable. We're just looking down on the colour now as it's facing on the black from what will be the top. You can see it's quite bright. The green-orange bar is very bright here. And here, that's how the stone will face. We'll just clean it a bit further around the edges. A nice straight colour bar, but the kernel is going to cause a major problem. Just tidying it up. Fair amount of backing on this piece too. This side here we're just cleaning off a bit further because the green-orange bar is very thin, and as we come in the bar will thicken up. as we're lifting the cap off by coming in. You can see the gem bar there, it's very thin across the top. Rub it a bit further. We've got to be able to see our way clear to have it as usable opal. So we can see the colour bar there. Just pointing it out, there's our little thin bar there. It's very thin under the cap, but it is very straight. Nice piece. Now here's our thickest point of the cap, and here we're very, very thin, hardly any cap at all. So now to bring this down, we'll bring it down evenly, working from the heaviest point, as we do with most rubbing down. Always take the overburden or the highest points off first. Set up a sense of balance in the piece as we go around, bringing it down evenly and slowly. Plenty of sand in this piece. But we still have enough cap on this to possibly get rid of the majority of this sand. Won't know until we get down further. Lots of problems there. Just rubbing gently, on using a rolling motion. We don't want to flatten the piece off. Bringing it down evenly all the way around. See sand problems in here, and through this area, and here even under the skin. We still may get rid of a lot of that as we go down. As I said before, work it evenly around the piece, making it down equally. Getting a sense of balance here, just slightly doming it. A major problem here. Sand's blown out, leaving a hole right in where that kernel is. That'll be unusable in that area. That would be right through the colour. Quite often matrix will carry sand down like this. You can see we still have a lot of problem, but we'll still bring the cap down further. You can see the colour just underneath the skin, it's starting to show. Rubbing gently and evenly. As I say, slightly doming it. It's a fairly thin bar, and it will be a shallow cabochon or cabochons depending on how many stones we cut. You see the kernel running through here, right through the centre of the stone. From this point here, straight across to this point here. So that entire centre area is now unusable. I'll continue cleaning this down to get the rest of the skin off. It's actually a white potch skin now. We've long since gone through the matrix. Yeah, just bringing it down gently and evenly. Starting to show a bit of colour now. And of course our problems are very evident. The sand here is very heavy. Kernel, well, that's the white potch area. Sand holes here and here. Quite a few problems. We'll take it down further, clean the remnants of that skin off, facing the opal proper. A little bit at a time. See a bit of a haze over this area here. We'll take that off and bring the colour right out, bright and sharp. That area is wrecked, it will be 2 stones. Plus we'll probably cut little pointers, which are fractions of a carat rather than waste opal. So here, now that we've taken the skin fairly well off, very bright piece. A little bit more to go here. There we are. Very bright piece of opal. If it didn't have that flaw through the centre, it'd be quite a large stone. Nice green, orange, black opal. Even a little bit of red, orange in the left-hand side there. Now you can see that, as I said before, this is where the kernel's gone right through and destroyed it. It's very, very clear where it runs in through here. And that will be straight through the opal all the way through the centre because of the sand holes. See the edge of it there. Plenty of sand here. This area here, we may be able to get some of this out during the doming process. Coming in from that way. So as we can see, the colour bar is quite thick. So when we're actually forming our little cabochon rolling over, we might be able to get rid of a lot of that sand. To map it out, we'll have to cut it through anywhere through this kernel. Just mapping out a point here with a pencil for our saw cut. Anywhere through there is fine. We'll also take this corner off, saving the little stone rather than grinding it away. A nice little stone in there. That'll give us a look into this area then when we've sliced this in half. As we grind in, we'll be able to see how deep that sand actually penetrates the opal in this area. I'm just mixing up some lubricant here for the saw using crystallite, a couple of tablespoons of crystallite in a jar of water. We just stir that up thoroughly. I sort of add this to the saw with the machine running. As it foams around the top guard, then we know that the tank's full. There we are. Quite a good lubricant, crystallite. And we'll line the piece up and make our saw cut. As I say, the pencil line is a guide. I generally slice most of my pieces by eye. But anywhere through that kernel will do no damage to the opal. So you can see when we come through here, plenty of sand straight through the whole piece. Two nice pieces of opal, still have problems and still have to be orientated. Very pretty. The purpose of this exercise here now is to show you what size we would get out of a piece of opal if we were to standard size or calibrate it. This piece here has a sand spot in the centre, which I'll just point out here, which will come out during the doming process. Now bear in mind here, we do not calibrate black opal, but this does give you an indication of what size you could get out of the piece. Should point out also we are standard sizing these pieces, or commercialising them I should say, at the customer's request, the owner's request. Looking at this piece here, as we previously marked out, we'll take this top corner off, getting that little stone in there. We'll also slice this bottom corner off, even though it's not usable, but it'll give us a look inside the piece. We would grind it away in any case. Using the same size template to give us an idea, we can see down in this area, down here, sand is very thick. We would not get that size out of it. Now we're mapping the piece out properly. We'll make a saw cut through there, giving us our stone in this area here. It would make a nice free format, as I said. It's being commercialised at the owner's request. We get a little stone in here, a nice little triangle stone up here. Just wetting the piece there, line it up with the saw. Never push hard against the saw, let the blade do the work. It will cut quite fast in any case. So here too, with the little piece we're taking off here, I always lean towards leaving the main stone a little bit bigger rather than having the pointer a bit bigger. Alright, there's the off cut. You can see how the sand has gone down in an arc here underneath, which will aid in the doming at the back of the piece. It's a sort of freak of nature that's worked in our favour for a change. Same applies to this little piece. We'll cut him at a later date. Be a little round cornered triangle. Beautiful pattern piece though. Nice broad pattern. Slicing the other piece off now, taking the corner off, we'll have a look at the sand. When we take this little pointer off, we'll have a better look inside the piece to see if the sand does go underneath the actual colour or not. There we go. No, the sand doesn't go under the colour. It's basically where we can see it. So we'll take the little corner off here just to get rid of it. Give us a look. We'll say it's not usable. Alright, and we're starting to get somewhere with this piece. There is our offcuts and the main stone there. Same with this piece here. I'll point out here that this corner can't be sliced off with the saw because the saw would take most of the opal during the cut. So we'll grind it off, unfortunately, as we will with this top corner here. And then just nipping pieces all the way around to get our oval. There's our knobby. Looking at the sand here now, we're going to orientate this piece properly. That sand's very deep. Also very deep in here, right through the colour. This little bit of sand won't be a problem. It'll fit in with our shaping. Now when we're mapping out the stone, always map it out bigger than you expect to get. Rather bigger than smaller. You can always take opal away, but you can't put it back. A nice stone in there. That sand might come out. Grinding gently until we get the sand to show halfway up the colour bar or above the colour bar, making it possible to roll it out during the doming. Still a bit of sand there. Fairly clean now. This area here is quite a large problem. We will have to take the right hand side of this stone off with the saw, I think, rather than grind this right hand corner away there. Plenty of sand there, plenty of it. Completely through the opal. I have to come in a fair way before that is clear enough to be usable. Unfortunately, sand and matrix does this to us all the time with opal. See, the sand is above the colour bar there. That'll roll out. Just cleaning it around the edge. Trying to ascertain now what opal is actually usable and where we'll have to cut opal away. Now we've taken that corner off. We'll map out the final stone. You see that this area here is, on the right hand side here, is totally unusable. It'll all have to be ground away, as with this corner and these little points. Should be quite a nice stone. Now we'll shape this up, adjust your water flow. I'm starting on the problem area, start to bring this into shape. Plenty of sand there. While we're doing this, we're working a shape that you have in mind, and always sticking to that as you go. Don't just grind in to get rid of the sand, you work it out within the shape. Just keep bringing it in a little bit at a time until the sand is above the colour bar or up near the top of the colour bar, so you can see your way clear, as I said before, to roll it out during the doming. Just bringing it in slowly, evenly and gently. We have to try and get rid of that sand to the best of our ability in the side, bring it up higher. You see it's lifting up now as we come in, but we also don't want to make the stone too small, so we'll only come as far as we need to, giving us the availability of being able to cut that out during the doming again, as I'd said earlier. Now, bearing in mind your shape all the time, you can work around the stone. Yeah, the sand is coming up fairly high onto the colour there, just a tiny bit more maybe. This side here we have a remnant of the kernel. It shows as a grey-white ring around the stone, so to speak, on this side. That has to go, it's not usable. It detracts from the value of the stone. Just bringing it into shape, a little bit at a time. I'm never too fussy about perfect shapes during pre-forming. I certainly am when we're final cutting though. Just nipping it into shape. You see the back here, we're very thick on this side. Very thin or virtually no back at all on this side. Bit of a hole in there. So we'll start from the high point here, bringing this back up into a setting edge. Working at approximately the angle you want to finish the back at. Just grinding it up, bringing the edge up. See our angle there. Still a long way to go with the back of this stone, of course. Just bringing the edge up now. As we come around to where the sand is or where the hole is, we'll stop either side of that. We'll sort of jump over it. There's nothing there to cut in any case. Again here, taking the high points, taking the top off, that ridge on the back. This stone unfortunately will have that sand hole in the back when it's finished. We'd have to make the stone greatly smaller to get rid of that. As long as it doesn't show from the face, we should be okay. Bringing the back up in a slight doming motion. Taking the shoulders off. Rolling it. Trying to maintain a sense of balance here. Bring the setting edge up a little further now. Jump over the sand. Now we'll just take the sharp corner off the shoulder that's been left there by the previous cuts. The colour bar is quite thick, we should get a nice shallow dome on this stone. Working from the very edge of the colour bar, where the sandy area is, in towards the centre, slightly rolling, doming it as we go. I'm not going to try and achieve a full cabochon on this piece. We'll do that when we final cut it. But we will give it a slight dome here, working from the corners, the shoulders, right into the centre of the piece. Gently, don't want to cut away too much Opal unnecessarily. Swing of that little domed effect. Quite a nice piece. Just trimming it up a little bit here and there. It doesn't matter how long it takes to do this, as long as you don't waste too much Opal doing it. There's our little preform. Very nice little stone. Nice pattern piece. As I said, that hole in the back there will remain. Our colour bar where it's square will be rounded off during the other processes from here on out. Now let's have a look at the other piece. Now we can see here the way we've sliced this up in orientation. We only have to take this corner off here where the remnants of the kernel are, and this bit of sand here we're hoping doesn't meet up with this sand on the side. You can see here that the sand is quite deep into the piece. Yes, our oval will be in this region here. So we should be able to get rid of most of that sand on that corner we just marked as we bring it into shape. Little bits here and there to bring it into oval. Just giving you an idea of the map out. There's our stone. We'll adjust the water flow again. Of course, we'll start on the problem area of the piece. Grind it away first. And as I've said before, bear in mind the final shape that you wish to end up with while you're doing this. The sand there has gone up as we've come in. We're just hoping this side here is not too deep. It's below the colour, but it needs to be further below the colour or it'll be in the back fairly well, which we don't want if we can avoid it. We also don't want to make the stone too small. Now it's below the colour bar there. You can check with sand spots like in the face of this by holding it up to a light and a bright light at an oblique angle, and you should be able to see if the sand penetrates or how deeply it penetrates. Just bring it into shape a little bit at a time. As I said, it doesn't matter how long it takes to shape a stone as long as you don't waste too much of the opal. A little bit at a time. Turning into a nice little stone here. There's our colour bar. Not real thick and a fairly dirty back, but it may clean up fairly well. Just trim it a little bit better into shape here. Now we'll bring the opal down as we did before, just working from the edge to the centre, gently rocking it, and taking the last remnants of the skin off at this point. Just gently rocking it. It'll be a very shallow dome, but still a dome nonetheless. Gently rocking it. Nice piece of opal. Again here we start with a high point on the back, working at the angle that we want the back to finish at. Take away the highest points, and as you get to sand areas like this, you jump over it. Nothing really there to cut. We basically bring the edge of the stone up bit by bit until we have a fair amount of balance in it. We'll take all these high points off the back about now, I'd say. Get a balance into that back. As we did before, just rolling it in, slightly doming the back. This back will surprisingly clean up fairly well, I'd say. A bit of blue colour there, it's not commercial. We'll have a fairly black back stone here. Just doming the back slightly. As I say, this is only a preform stage, so we don't have to be perfect. Taking it back down a bit, getting a balance into it. Just trim that little setting edge up a bit further, up the stone now. Take the shoulder off created by that series of cuts. Roll it in. See, the stone's cleaning up fairly well on the back. It's not an absolutely thick colour bar, but thick enough. We've left it fairly square here, but we'll get our cabochon orientated properly during the final cutting, sanding and pumicing stages. Lovely broad pattern green, orange, black stone. Here's our 2 rubs. This will be ready to be dopped up shortly. Just giving you a look at the overall picture here. Big sand hole in the left stone there that will remain in the back. Just rough preforms at this stage. So we've left the opal fairly square, we will dome that over. Very pretty stones. Black backed. Green, orange, black opal. And we're going to make a dop stick here using a piece of 1/4 inch dowel. I use the 180 grit wheel, the coarse rubbing down wheel. We'll just flatten the end of the stick off and chamfer the edge. That's our standard dop stick. Now for smaller stones, what I do here is I taper the stick, sort of hollow grinding it. Now you can do this anywhere you like down the stick. You can make that longer or steeper the angle, depending on how much clearance you want. And you can make it as small as you like, depending on the stones you want to dop up. You must make sure that little pad on the top there is concentric to the rest of the stick. Otherwise, when you're spinning the stone, you'll have problems. So this way I can dop very, very small stones and still use the same size dop stick that my hands are used to. So you can go as small as you like here, or as small as you need to. There we are. It's our tapered dop stick. Now our next operation here is using our methylated spirit burner. We apply some dopping wax to the stick, heating it up fairly well. Make sure you have enough wax on the stick to cover the entire stick when we roll it up. We heat that, moisten our fingers so the wax doesn't stick to them, and we'll roll it up. Roll it up, little pad of wax on the top there. There's our stick waxed and ready to go. And we'll take a stick here that's already been waxed, heating that, rolling the wax up as we just did previously. We take our stone, warm the back of it till the moisture evaporates from the face, and you will see that while you're doing it. Heat the wax fairly well. Place it as centrally as possible on the back of the stone. We'll pick that back up, reheat it between the opal and the wax, moisten fingers again and roll the wax up into the back. What we're doing here is the stone has to be set at 90 degrees to the stick and as central as possible in all directions. We're using the colour bar here as a guide. There we are. See our stone dopped. There's both of them now, ready to be final cut. They're going to be very nice stones. We're just showing you the spinning action here, using the thumb and first 3 fingers of the right hand to do the spinning, and the thumb and forefinger of the left hand as a chuck. We can get total control over the spinning motion, and we need to do that to get a good finish. Now we'll final shape this stone, again adjusting your water flow. We'll just trim this bit by bit until we have it into shape, working at an angle to the wheel, which creates a little setting edge on the uppermost or the opal side of the stone, the face. You must maintain that angle all the way through this shaping process. Nearly all opal is shaped by eye. You can use a template as a guide if you wish. Most cutters prefer to just do it this way. Just a little bit at a time. As I say, no rush shaping it up, just as long as we're not wasting too much opal doing it. And a little bit here and there. I'm looking down on the stone there as we're working, so it's quite easy to see the shape. We're bringing the opal into its shallow dome now, starting right on the very shoulder itself and working around to the centre. We're cross-hatching the centre there to get rid of any high points before we spin it. It's a very thin bar, we have to work gently here. And we spin from the outside edge right into the centre. We cross-hatch again to get rid of the spiralling created by the previous set of cuts. Trimming a little bit here and there to bring it into shape. Now if we do cut little bits here and there like that, we have to go back to the spinning process and put everything back into symmetry. Again, cross-hatching to get rid of the spiralling. So a little trim here and there. Final cut has to be the final cut. It has to be a good shape. There's our stone, finally shaped. This stone here has problems on this side. Because of this hole in the back here, we will have to come in a little bit on the side of this stone as we're shaping the oval, so that the hole ends up below the setting edge at the back. Now I'm starting here on the solid side of the stone and working round to where the hollow is. We still have to cut gently here because it will cut away quickly where it's thinner. And maintaining your shape all the while. Yes, slowly. I'm cutting very intensely here on this side because that's got to come in, but it's also got to be in shape. We do need that sand hole as far down the setting edge as possible. Just bringing the opal into a dome, again working the shoulder. Sharp shoulder left from the last series of cuts. Rolling and cross-hatching here just to get rid of the high points before we start our spinning. As I've said, we start from the edge, we'll spin it all the way up and over into the centre of the stone. That's it. Cross-hatching again to get rid of spiralling. It'll be a shallow dome, but a pretty one. The stone is slightly out of shape. A little trim on the ends. As I say, if you do trim the ends like this, you have to go back and bring the whole thing into symmetry. See here, I'm working the longer ends more than I would the shorter, because they cut less when you're spinning. Nice little stone. Now we're going to sand them. Adjust your water flow on the sander. Using a 600 grit belt here, starting at the angle that the stone was cut at, doing the setting edge first. We'll show you that. It's a fairly sharp wheel, this one, it's fairly new. And we'll just have a close look. We have a satin finish on the end here. That's the desired effect. Looking up the side of the stone here, on the setting edge itself, these vertical lines have to be gotten rid of, the remnants of the wheel marks from the previous operation. Again, working at the same angle, Work the long sides more than you would the shorter. We're only doing the absolute edge at the moment. Let's just spin that top off, that top corner. Here we are, there's our finish on there now. No wheel marks left. That's the desired finish we want to achieve over the entire opal in this stage. We're taking the opal shoulder off here, the actual opal itself, working the long sides, getting in preparation to spinning it up, as we did when we were shaping it. Spinning here, up to the centre, from the edge to the centre. Trying to get a nice evenness in this shallow dome. Cross hatching here to get rid of any spiralling. Spinning it from the edge to the centre. Cross hatching again. We'll show you here in slow motion, working the long sides first, up and down, backwards and forwards, and the cross hatching is actually a circular motion working across the face of the dome, but we're working across the long axis. It's just to get rid of the spiralling and evenness has to be created. Let's have a look at the face of this stone now. We look at this area here in the centre, we still have remnants of wheel marks, grinding marks. They have to be gotten rid of. And the centre of a stone is usually the hardest area to finish. So we go back to the sander and we cross hatch that centre, all the while spinning from the edges into the centre, working the long edges more than the short. Just taking the high points off here, spinning it back up to the centre. From the very edge to the centre. The spinning action is quite fast here. Cross hatching the top. And there's our finish. Now as the light runs around this stone you can see it's still bumpy, it's still faceted, but it has a nice matte finish. That's what we have to achieve on both these stones. With this other stone now we do exactly the same, start from the very edge. Work our way up over the opal shoulder, the square edge that we've left there, bringing it into a shallow cabochon, spinning and cross hatching. Right from the edge to the centre. Fairly shallow dome, but you can see here the effect is quite nice. That's only a satin finish. We're nearly ready now to pumice. What we'll do here is we'll wash our hands and the stones and your sticks before this operation. Make sure this wheel is very wet or it will drag and burn the stones. Apply a liberal amount of pumice powder. I'm using coarse and medium here. The formula for this is in the text. Now starting on the edge again, we do exactly as we did on the sander. Repeat the operation from the edge up over the shoulder to the centre of the stone. And we're spinning and oscillating, making sure that we pumice every single spot on that stone. Let's get a nice even finish in this operation because polishing doesn't cut very much. And you won't be able to get rid of a lot of marks during the polishing stages. Plenty of water and pumice, as I said. Water and pumice is cheap, opal isn't. Working from the very edge of the stone, up over the shoulder, spinning it rapidly. Work the long edges a bit more there, you see. I just wipe it on my arm, have a look at the stone. What I can see here as the light runs around this, we now have a semi-polish. This is our pre-polish stage. You can see no rippling or wheel marks in this stone. It's quite a nice finish. The same with the other stone. Again, working its setting edge first, up over the shoulder to the face of the stone, spinning and oscillating at the same time, and maintaining a wet wheel. Felt does drag very much. If you let it go, if you let it dry, it'll drag badly, it'll burn stones very, very quickly. Spinning it up here. There's our stone pumiced. You see as the light runs around the stone, that's our indicator, and it shows us no rippling, no wheel marks, just a nice semi-gloss finish. Now with the polishing here, make sure the wheel is very wet. It also will drag, being a felt buff. And again, start on the edge of the stone and work your way up to the centre of the dome. Spinning and oscillating. You see I support my right hand with a couple of fingers of my left hand here. And do whatever makes life easier for you or more comfortable. Working the entire surface area of this stone, make sure that the wheel is wet. Don't let it dry out. We can see polishing powder here going up over the stone onto the stick, so the wheel isn't very dry at this point. Well, no, it isn't too dry. And there's our polished finish. As the light runs around again, you can see we have a nice, even, high gloss polish. So that's the desired effect. This is what we're after. A beautiful stone. We do the same with the other stone. Working from the edge of the stone, the setting edge all the way up over the shoulder into the centre, spinning and oscillating, making sure we cover the entire surface area of the stone during the polishing. Spinning it rather fast. Gives you a more even finish the faster you spin. Working a lot on the centre of this stone here because it is slightly fatter in shape. There's our finish on that stone. As the light runs around, we can see a good finish here, no rippling, no wheel marks. It's a nicely polished stone. And of course we wash our stones and the sticks as we have done between sanding, pumicing and now this operation. Using a clean towel because we don't want to scratch the stones with grit from previous operations. We dry the stones off. And using our spirit lamp again, we'll take them off here by heating between the opal and the wax. Now I'm using a blunt silver knife here. It doesn't scratch opal. Do the same with the other stone in a minute. We'll just warm this up now. Roll the wax back up. Heat it and place it as centrally as possible on the face of the stone, as we did before. Picking this up, we'll heat between the opal and the wax. Roll it back into the face of the opal. And get it as central as you can and at 90 degrees to the stick. Of course, again here we're using the colour bar as our guide. You can see here, nice and central, 90 degrees to the stick. If you use the back of the stone as a guide, it would put you out. Do the same with the second stone. Just pare it off gently. As I say, it's a blunt silver knife, it won't scratch opal. Again, heat the wax and roll it up. Just give the stone a little bit of a warm in the face. Heat the wax fairly hot. Place it as centrally as possible again. Pick up the stone, wet your fingers and roll the back up to the face of the opal, as we did with the previous one. Right, there's our stones ready to cut. You can see this point here, where the divot is, well, our setting edge will have to be in that region there. We'll have to come down to that all the way around the piece. So we'll basically end up right down here near this colour bar. Because of this area here, we don't have a choice. That's where our setting edge will have to finish. We just look at the spinning action again here, using the thumb and first three fingers of the right hand to revolve the stick, the thumb and forefinger of the left hand as a chuck. We get very good control over our spinning action this way. Of course, in and out movement is created by our elbows, and that gives us our cutting pressure. We'll start the machine and adjust your water flow. And as with all the previous operations, I generally start on the highest point of the back. Get rid of the overburden and get a rough sense of balance before we go to a spinning technique. As we come to that sand, we'll slightly jump over that and not cut it. Not until we get down further with this edge. We're trying to get the edge as square and as straight as possible. We're working at an angle that we need to finish at. You'll see those angles a little later. Just wiping it off here, we'll show you what we've done so far. There's our setting edge. It's nice and straight, but it still has to come down further, because it is not yet below this little divot, which is where it has to be. So it all has to come down to that level there, the entire way around the stone. We do that by looking down onto the piece. You can see the little divot created by the sand hole in the back. And as we turn around to this side, we can see it's nice and even and smooth, and there is no dip in the setting edge at all. Now we have to get rid of that so that we do not see it from the face of the stone. Do this by working at the same angle again and bringing the setting edge up very, very slowly, but very accurately. It must be even and straight. Jump over that bit of sand there. Take the high points either side of it. Just bringing it up gently. Now again, working from the top, I'm working at the same angle during this operation that I was during the previous, only now I'm working from above so that I can see what's happening with that little divot. You can actually see when it's gone. So we just jump over it there. Let's take the shoulder off now, take that corner off. Start to get a bit of a dome into our back. Just rolling and taking the high points off before we actually finally spin this. There we go, we spin it from the edge right up to the centre of the back. Creating a nice shallow dome on the back of the stone. Okay. Again, looking from the top, just a final trim here. Get rid of that little divot. We'll show you that shortly. Spinning it back up again. See here the back of the stone, it's fairly rough because it's a fairly new wheel. We probably will lightly sand the back of this stone to get a better finish. Although we do leave them rough finish, we don't polish the backs. See, looking down here now, we can see our little divot. On this side it's nice and smooth. The light runs around as a nice smooth edge. As we get round here we can still see a little bit of grey. But looking right down the stone, see the light runs around, it was just about gone. As our setting edge, it's fairly high. And the stone on the left has now been sanded lightly. The one on the right has a lot of problems with that sand hole. That's going to be a very difficult stone to cut the back on. Nonetheless, it has to be done, and that sand hole will remain in the back of that stone. As long as it's not visible from the face, it's perfectly okay. Now, as with the other stones, after you've adjusted your water flow here, work on the high point of the back first, getting rid of the overburden, and as usual, when you get to the sand or a sand area, jump over it. There's nothing to cut there, it's a hole. Just bringing it up evenly, working at the angle that you wish to finish at. Jumping over that sand there, trying to get a nice straight edge. Just taking the high points off the back, sort of a slight rocking motion there. Get rid of all the high points first, and then the spinning action will be a lot easier, and it will spin concentrically then. There we go, just a little cross hatching here. Just spin him up from the back, from the very edge to the back, to the centre of the back. Again, we're doing the same thing here, looking down on the stone, using the same technique. We can see the little divot in this stone created by the sand hole. We must get rid of that. We don't want it visible from the face of the stone. Just taking that shoulder off that we left from the last series of cuts. Get it into a rough balance here, and then we'll spin it back up again. Getting a form of balance into the stone now. Here's both the stones now finished. They have both been lightly sanded. The sand hole has remained in the back, as you can see, but it isn't visible from the face, and that's the most important thing. We're taking them off here, heating between the opal and the wax using our spirit lamp. And again, as I say, I'm using a soft, blunt silver knife. I am not scratching the opal. And I'm not using very much heat. You can see the wax is still very hard. Just pare it off. Don't worry about excess wax on the stones at this point. Just heating between the stone and the wax. Gently paring it off. Carefully, and not to touch the opal, even though the knife will not scratch it. And we'll just clean these up. I just use a tin lid, a little bit of methylated spirits, or in some countries that'd be wood alcohol. Pour a little bit in the lid. We'll put the two stones in there, and it only takes a few minutes and the wax will dissolve off these stones. Clean and dry them using a clean towel. Of course, we don't want to scratch them at this point. There we are. Now, as is normally done, we'll weigh these two stones shortly using electronic carat scales. Beautiful pair of stones. Lovely green, orange, black opal. There we are. We just weigh the first stone. You see here, once the scale settles, it weighs 2.8 carats. Second stone here. Wait for them to settle. 3.7 carats. Quite nice sized commercial stones. Now, for display purposes, we're just putting them in a nice case. Give you a look at those. They're two very high quality green, orange, black opals. Very lovely stones.